welcome to the new episode of Frisk and Flow. Today we have another interesting stories to share, and of course, with full of risks. I have an honor to welcome to the studio today an entrepreneur, the CEO of Classic Speed Inc., CarPornRacing, Hotel Ava, and King Tower Farm. Welcome to the studio, Angie Mead King.
Thanks, Jane. Hello to everyone listening, but excited to be here.
I'm happy to have you here in the studio today and talk with you, Angie, or hear more about your entrepreneurship journey and the risks related to that. But before we jump on the deep end, I would like to know more about, first of all, who is Angie and where you come from. Can you share a little bit about yourself?
Okay, so I reside in the Philippines and I'm a third generation business owner, and I've inherited businesses from my father, who's inherited it from his father. And I also have my own businesses that I've put up on my own. I'm mainly into cars and farming, and the hotel is sort of on autopilot, so I don't really do much work for them. But in general, yeah, based in the Philippines, and I love taking risks, hence why I agreed to the podcast interview. Um, and I'm a trans woman, so
Fantastic. I love when you start an episode by saying I love taking risks. I totally agree with you, and that's quite interesting. I think you're the first entrepreneur to mention that you have inherited your businesses from your father and during the generation. So can you maybe share a little bit about that? Your childhood, how was it back then, and how did you get to that, or maybe how your father and family get to that
okay.
business through their parents?
So starting back from my grandfather, he was actually in the war. He said everyone was equal because the war had basically taken all the assets, and only the people closer to the current government were awarded with certain things. So he started from ground zero. He first made money, like he was an entrepreneur from day one because he had to do it out of survival mode. So he would buy books and then sell them again, and then he would basically trade things. Like he would see things that were cheaper, and then go to a certain area where he could get a little more for it. And as my grandfather grew up, he got into multiple businesses, and one of the semi-successful businesses that are still open till today is our glass business. And our glass business is roughly 60 plus years old, if I'm not mistaken. It's very old already. It's still running. It's actually in the heart of the city where we don't belong anymore because everything has been urbanized. So we keep telling the shareholders, like, we got to move out of here soon because the land value alone is so crazy, and everyone's got tall buildings, and here we are with like a two level business. But my grandfather founded the motel business late already into his life, and it was where he found success, like the hospitality industry, from hotels to motels in the Philippines. And back then, our motel was sort of known as a love hotel, where it was where you would go to get intimate, because in the Philippines, the general home situation for people is you live with your parents or your uncle, or you live with your siblings. So for you to get intimate quiet time, you needed to go to a love motel. But
Right.
fast forward, like when my father inherited the business, he didn't take it sitting down. He decided to upscale it. He wanted to, because him and his brother both inherited the same core business, right? Both motels. And he was like, I don't want to fight
Right.
my brother. I'm going to elevate my business and price up and start offering thematic rooms. So we were offering like the king suite where it's a palace, and then we have a car suite where there's a car inside. So the theme room started with with my father, and he priced away from his brother, and his brother stayed in the medium, I guess, medium market, or mid to lower class market, and my dad took the middle to high class market. So that way they were not fighting for the same segment. Um, Fast forward, my father passed away 2015, and I inherited the business. And um, the I saw in the questions like, what was the biggest challenge we faced? And the pandemic was the biggest challenge we
Yes.
faced, because I had to choose between possibly keeping the business open and going bankrupt, or closing it down temporarily and retiring everyone so that we could possibly open a few months after, because it was so bad in the Philippines where hospitality was hit the hardest, because we weren't allowed to operate. We weren't allowed to take in any customers, which meant back then my 370 employees had zero work, and the overhead of 370 employees was crazy. So we ended up doing the difficult decision of actually closing the brand down. From
Mm.
there, the riskiest part for me, because I was in the same boat where I was sharing a brand with my brother that we were arguing about. And
Right.
we came to a point where I finally was able to get my team on board to rebrand my business and give up an iconic brand. We had such an iconic brand that a lot of Filipinos knew from Manila. And then if you travel around the globe, they're like, oh, we know that logo. It was so famous. I ended up giving it up to my brother and said, I'm going to start from scratch. I know how media works. I know what branding difference we can do to set ourselves apart from you guys. So you can have the brand. I sold it to him for the cost of just rebranding. So no
Right.
markup. I said, new signages, this much, new menu, this much, new flyers, this much, and then a new website and new social media. And here's the price. And he's like, done. So it was one of the best decisions that I've done, because we literally now when we see each other, it's always catching about life and family and health,
Mm.
and there's nothing to do with business, and it's so good. It is one of the best business decisions I've ever done. So that's like the brief history for the family. But I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family.
Mm-hmm.
Since we were young, we were always encouraged to think of entrepreneurial ways, and then we were always shown like we were brought to the office when we were young, and we would play in the office.
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking. Is this, as you mentioned, this whole evolutional story from the time of wars and how the business inherited to your dad and so on, and then splitting the companies between the brothers and so on. It's quite interesting. Is entrepreneurship something is that so common in Philippines families, or is it just your family, or how do you think it is?
Oh, in the Philippines, if you're in, I guess, like the Chinese Filipino community, entrepreneurship is very common. Um, a lot of the Philippines have these businesses where the families live in the building, and then on the lower part of the building is their warehouse, or their merchandising, or their manufacturing, and the whole family lives either on the upper floor, and the kids are involved as soon as they can read and write. So, yes, I think very common in our country to be be involved with entrepreneurial families. And sometimes there's a part where the the kids don't want to join the family business because it's not their passion, and some
Right.
parents are happy to let their kids venture out and do other things, and then some parents are very angry that they don't want to do it and continue the legacy It's always that legacy word.
Hmm. Yes, yes, you mentioned the whole sorry, the whole family is included, and as I mentioned you before, I have a like a little bit family through my cousins in Philippines, and I know a bit about the culture that they have a huge family in there, and everyone is together, and the, as you mentioned, the kids are involved in the everyday things that family do already from the young age. Did you see this, or do you see this a huge, like an impact on you? If you think you as an entrepreneur, was it something that was like clear that you will be an entrepreneur, or did you ever consider some other paths to choose? Or
Um, After high school, I was allowed to stop schooling because wasn't I wasn't really interested with academia. So I went to work for a car shop. So my first job was to work for a car shop for a friend, and that was like from 17 to 18 years old. And I was like fully um, fully involved and fully committed. And for the whole year, I didn't even want to stop because my dad was like, "We only agreed a year. You have to finish university." And I was like, "No, but I'm already making money and I'm meeting all these people. I'm doing all these things. Like, why? Why waste my time with theoretical knowledge that might not even be applicable to real life situations?" And he was like, "It's for structure and discipline and all these things, right?" So I ended
right.
up going back to school, but I was exposed to, yeah, even fending for myself at an early age because it was encouraged. It was encouraged for us to experiment and do our own thing and always deal with the consequence of our actions. It was a very common thing that we were drilled in when we were younger because we were allowed to do any sport, and if we get injured with that sport, it's like that's the consequence of your actions. You have to figure out what you did wrong and fix it.
That's really interesting. I think this lifestyle and the way of thinking, and maybe educating the children, and also taking risks and taking the
Yes.
responsibility of those. You have been involved in those kind of things and situation already at the young age. If you think risks, did you, for example, when your father was an entrepreneur, did you see that he took any risks, and maybe what have you learned on those risks, if you can say like that, if you as a children did you like see some risk that your father took back then?
I think definitely he took risks on the rebranding part of the business. And back then, there was a management philosophy called like the Maverick system. And the Maverick system was supposedly like the cutting edge for management. And then he copied a lot of the Japanese things like the 5S and the Kaizen. He took a leap of faith. He went with the ISO certification or the TUV. So for a hotel to have a TUV certification it didn't make sense because the TUV certification was more for manufacturing. So
Right.
he would he would certainly do things that were more out of the box thinking so that he could see like what worked for the business and what didn't. There was always an evaluation phase to the things that he would do. And he would always say, like, let's do a test case in the smaller branch. And then if it works out, we can roll it out to the other branches. But if it doesn't work out, then at least it's isolated to this, just that.
Yeah, I think that's quite thoughtful and considerate way to also take risk in business. And of course, you can try different ways, test it, and if it works, then you can go like a full out of with that risk. What about you mentioned you needed to go uh, back to the school, even though you were already working and making all these connections. After the school, what happened, and did you how did you ended up to entrepreneurship? What age and
Okay,
so on?
okay. So after school, I went back to university. I decided to overload all my units, and I graduated in 3 years flat. I did summer school, I did night school, I did extracurricular activities just to finish, and that's how much I dislike school. Academically, I wasn't a star performer, except my last 2 terms of university. I got into the dean's list just to prove to my father, like, I'm not dumb, I'm just lazy. So it was one of those, like, I know I can do this. It's just zero interest for me. But in university, we had more interesting classes because I took hotel restaurant management. So it was catering classes. It was more practical knowledge that I knew I would be able to carry into my work career. So after that, we were given divisions between the company. I was started in the company handling only the food and beverage. So my brother who's older, was already handling the. He was like the assistant general manager already, and I started as just food and beverage because I had an interest for the kitchen. I knew, I knew how the food safety worked. I knew how food costing worked. And my task back then was, he was like, this business makes 80 to 90 million, and your goal is to get it to 100 million. And the contribution to the total sales back then was only like 12 to 15%. You're like, your goal is to get it to 20%. So for the first 3 years, that was my job. And I managed to attain the targets. And we managed to, in the beginning, it was a struggle because the management was very, we don't need F&B people. They're just waste of money. And they're just like, and it's like, they're waste of money because no one knows how to run the kitchen. So we ended up bringing
Right,
back F&B supervisors in every branch, and then every kitchen had a quality checker now. Hence, we were able to cut down costs, improve the sales, and then reformulate recipes so that they were more profitable. So we went straight back to the basics, and we were able to prove that the F&B is a vital contributor to the bottom line. It wasn't just a, oh, that's just there for guest convenience. It was a profitable endeavor that we were like, this can generate more money if someone was actually running it properly. So that's where I started. And 3 years in, my father forced me to go back and do masters.
right.
And you know, I thought I was done with school. So from university, we had to take masteral. We took masters in entrepreneurship, which was Friday, Saturday class for a whole day, Friday, Saturday, and every week, and for a year and a half. And the
And sorry, how old were you during this time
oh
around?
wow, I don't remember. I think 20. It's probably 25, 26. So
Right, yeah,
I had work experience already, and my dad's like, if you want to run half the business, you need to graduate your master with a master's degree. So I know that you're ready. And I was like, I hate school. I hate it that you're doing this to me, and I hate it that it's Friday, Saturday, because back then my social life was off the hook, and Friday, Saturday
right.
were vital days of the week. So Um, Masters in Entrepreneurship was a very practical masteral degree because we used our business as a case model to show our professors this is where we're at now. And then at the end of the year, we were supposed to present improvements based off the lessons and courses that we were taking with them. So even up till masters, we were getting schooled on entrepreneurship. Things like internal analysis. What are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? And then same with the external analysis. What are our key deliverables? What are the tasks? What are the budgets? And everything was tied in from a university standpoint all the way down to the practical implementation. So down to marketing, down to what are the threats that are going to possibly make us run out of business, and then what are the opportunities that we can ride on and figure out if that was the strategy to grow the business. So we did all that for a year and a half, and then after I graduated, that's when my father's like, okay, the siblings will now split the business. Older brother chooses this side, and I got left with multiple brands. My brother picked all the same brand, and I had a mix of brands in my portfolio because he was like, I don't want those. So he got to choose
Right.
first. So that's how we split the businesses, and even till today, it works out for us because it was sort of split based off geographical area also, and I like staying in the
Uh-huh.
more central part of the city, and he likes staying more in the upper south part of the city.
Right, sounds then quite a natural split and transition for both of you. But you mentioned the education, which I talked many entrepreneurs, and what I think the common opinion is that, or many of them wouldn't go back to school if they could choose. I wonder if you think the same way, even though you were forced to go to your a bachelor's and master's degree. Do you think it was useful for you, or did you just do it because your father forced you to?
Now that I'm in my 40s, right? So looking back at it, it was more of the discipline, the networking, and there are there were structural and frameworks that were very important, and it helped clear the corporate communication language faster, because from vision, mission, objectives, tasks, all the way down to the key result areas and to the performance indicators, the structure was so laid out that it was easy to explain to every department, like, all the small things that you're doing is focused to get into our main goal of XYZ. So yes, I think it was beneficial, but back then, yes, I was highly against it. Um, but thinking forward, right, there were certain areas where networking was one of the more important things. It's almost equivalent to people going to the Ivy League schools like Harvard or Berkeley or MIT. It's sometimes not the education you're after; it's the people that you meet along the way.
Right, that's really well summarized. Yes, I think most people find that also the meaning and the purpose of the education. Maybe you can find some friendship and connections, and of course you can reach out to those people after you have finished your
Yes.
education, and whatever outcome it can bring to you. So I think it's not even good or bad. It's how you interpret it at that moment also.
Yes.
But I loved, I think you said at first you love risk taking. So I wonder, um, during this time and after the school and all this, having your company through your father, but then you have many companies of your own at the moment. So I was wondering, what is your biggest risks if you think this journey and these companies you own?
I would think the biggest risk on my end was rebranding our hotel and giving up that iconic logo. And I think the second biggest risk was when I came out as a trans woman, if it would affect the businesses and how people perceived my businesses, because in the car industry also locally. I do car restoration, modification, and I was like, will this hamper people from coming to me and getting their cars done because of this association? They didn't want to be like even in the same room, but things worked out and we're still in business.
That's wonderful to hear, and I also support every people to be as they are. So I'm really glad to hear that that wouldn't affect in anyhow. And I think it really doesn't matter or have anything to do with business, how you are as a person. So everyone, we should respect everyone as they are, and just and do the business rather than if there's anything to do with the identity or something like that. So I think it's
Yes.
irrelevant in that context. So I'm glad to hear that. You mentioned your car business. So I wonder if that interest on cars came, as you mentioned, you were 17 and 18 when you first started to work with cars. So uh, how did you establish your car companies, and where does the interest on cars come from?
Okay, so my my father was into cars also when he was younger, and after school on the weekends we would drive off to go camping in a lake, and every weekend it was the bonding moments, but it was the yeah, it was the car rides that were so much fun because the music in the car and then the scenery changes from the city to the greenery. And I started camping ever since I was 6 years old. So we were always going into nature. And it's funny enough, right? Yes, I love cars, but I love nature also because it was how I grew up. I was very active with water sports from windsurfing to swimming and moving into, I guess, my high school life, that's when started slowly getting more interested with cars because in the city, in high school, if you had a car, everyone looked at you like, ooh. So it was one of those like, I need to have a car. I need to have a nice car. So it's such a funny story because my grandfather gave me a birthday gift and it was cash. And rather than go to the bank, I went out and bought a 1974 Volkswagen Beetle. And I drove it home, and my dad was angry, not at the fact that I didn't have a driver's license, but at the fact that I bought a car and I didn't tell him because he had a Volkswagen when he was younger. And he begins to tear the carpet off the car and says, like, look, you bought a lemon. It's all rusted and deteriorated. And I'm like, oh. So, my father being um, proactive, he's always like, okay, after school, we're going to schedule a tinsmith, a mechanic, an electrician, a painter, and you're going to get your hands dirty and learn how to fix your car. So for the next 4 years, that's what we did. I was hands on tinkering with the Volkswagen in our house after school from 3:30 all the way till 6 p.m. right about dinner. I was just there learning and getting dirty. And that's what got me into the car modding scene. But what solidified it was on my third year in high school, I snuck out my father's car and I ended up crashing the car, and he was like, that's your graduation gift. I suggest you sell it and buy a cheaper car because, it's a wreck. And I was like, that's why I went to
Right.
work for a car company because part of the deal was I'm going to work for you, but you're going to help me fix my car. And that's how it started. So not only was I working for this company to help myself, it was to help finish my car, which was damaged. And we finished the car. But the only problem when you're in the car business, it's almost like being in watch or jewelry business. You're always like, oh, I want that. Oh, I want that. Oh, let's get that. And my father was like, yes, you're working, but you seem to be spending more than you're making. And Yeah, it's like I had student debt because I was able to just sign on, like, oh, okay, I'll pay it next time. Here, I'll just sign for it, and it was a bad but good time for me. But that's what got me into cars, and even till today, my businesses are we're a very bespoke business where we take on clients that are very upscale. And for Classic Speed, we do sort of the projects that are long-term restoration jobs. So it's very difficult because like each restoration job takes like 4,000 plus parts over a year and a half of work to get these cars back into pristine condition. So it's a lot of different multiple businesses, but I enjoy the diversity of what I do.
Mhm. That's a great story to getting your hands dirty, like from the beginning. and and your father sort of gave you that lesson to learn yourself, or also that opportunity to learn yourself and fix your car and start from there,
Yes.
and establish now this like a Classic Speed Inc. that you do the restorations from beginning to an end, and which is a huge job you make. Uh, it takes a long time to restore a car, like a classic cars. I can guess that. But was it a risk for you then to jump on your own company in this car industry?
Um, in the beginning, yes. The business started off as we were into motorsports back then. So we were racing cars in the weekend and destroying them. So we needed a small garage to fix the cars. And as the number of clients grew, it grew into the I'm fixing your race car, but hey, can I send my road car and can you check on that too? And we're like, sure. That's how the business started. It was started from just being doing good service to the race cars that we were fixing, and then slowly clients were like, hey, can you check my road car also? And we're like, hey, you know what, there might be a business in this. So it was my father, when we started, said in exact words, there's no money to be made in the car industry. And I came back to him and said, like, sometimes it's not always about money. It's about what you love doing. And I was like, this doesn't detract from my work with you. I work in the company from 8 to 3, and then I work in the car shop from 3 p.m. to the evening. And then the weekends, I get to do all the car stuff. So I was like, I know what to deliver in the business, so don't bother me with my business. Like, let me do this because this is for me. Like, I know what to do with your business and I'm going to do this for me. So in the beginning, he was not supportive, but after 2 years, he started sending me all his cars. So I knew I was on the right track.
All right. Yeah, finally your father sent his car to you to fix, right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
That's
that
when you know you're
that's
like, okay, he sees quality in what we're doing also.
I wonder what car was that back then that he sent to you.
Well, it started off with his service cars, his house cars. And then it got to the point where we were doing a project together. Like, he was like, okay, I want a race car, but I want it to have cold aircon and all this. And we're like, okay, so what base car do we get? So he got a 2009 Corvette. And then we ended up buying also an
Nice.
older BMW, and we were fixing that to be his play car. And I actually still have those cars still today. I haven't sold them. So memories.
That sounds great. So was there actually the path to preparing and restoring classic cars? Was it a decision that you took purposely, or was it something that you just flew
That
to that direction?
Okay, that the restoration business is a whole nother story in itself. I didn't like classic cars. I didn't like American classic cars because I thought they were old technology, they were heavy, and they were. I liked fast race cars. I like new. I like nimble. I like lightweight. And muscle cars back then for me was the exact opposite, right? Because it's 60, 70-year-old technology. It's clunky. It's big. And when I met my wife, she was in love with Mustangs. All she talked about was one day I'm going to have a 67 Mustang. She specifically knew exactly which Mustang she wanted. One weekend, I'd organized a friend to bring a Mustang to the car shop and have had my wife come to the shop to try it out. And we learned like back then the as you're driving, you're doing this with the steering wheel, but the car's going straight and then the fumes are going into the car and then you hit the brake and the car will gently like come to a stop. It wasn't even urgent in terms of stopping. And from there she's like, "Oh my god, they're nice to look at, but they're terrible to drive." And I was like, "Yeah, see, I told you." But secretly, I was actually building her a car already. I was building her a 67, and I was learning from this car shop that I had partnered with in the US. And over 2.5 years, we assembled a very special car for her, which she still owns till today. And through that process, I fell in love with the idea of muscle cars, of not being the fastest, but being the coolest, being the most heritage, having the most culture. And I noticed when you drive a fancy sports car, maybe a lot of the male demographic will be like, wow, cool. But when you drive a muscle car, you have older people, you have younger people, you have kids. Everyone will point at your car like, wow, what era is this? Where's it from? How long have you had it? Because it's got so much history behind it rather than showing up in a fancy brand new sports car where it's like, okay, you have money, but when you show up in a classic car, you're like, oh, you got style, you got taste,
Yes.
you have essence, right? There's more thought to it rather than just like going out and buying the most expensive thing, which led me to acquiring the classic car business locally because I fell in love with it so much that I had an opportunity to get into this business, and it's such a fun business for me because I get to meet with people who are building building like things that were passed on from the older generation. Like my father left this car and I don't want to sell it because it was his dream car, so I want to fix it so I can use it. Or I've saved up 5 years of my savings for this, can you please restore my car? It's
Right.
things that it's not on the whim that people come to us and say like, restore this car. And because they know the waiting time is long, it's premeditated. People come to us because they have a dream, they have a vision, and then they really want this certain car to be part of their life.
That sounds so like a motivational and inspiring as you get to work with these kind of dreams and long-term projects that really matter to people. As you mentioned, that it's not a piece of some metal and plastic and
Yes.
the things it goes. It's rather than it comes from the generations and it can have some uh, value. There are memories. There are a lot of things behind those cars that people bring to you. And I think every companies and stories have their like inspiration and successes. Also, you mentioned those um, challenges you faced. Of course, everyone knows the pandemic. What if you think? Have you faced any other challenges during these years of entrepreneurship, and how did you uh, come over of those challenges?
Mm, I guess in the beginning of my business, working with my father, right? I had to work with a lot of his management, and being the COO or child of the owner, it was very difficult to win respect, win the the I I listen to you and I see you because you know what you're doing, rather than, oh, you're the son of the owner, so we have to listen to you. So breaking into the system to affect change was very difficult at a young age, especially because a lot of these people were my seniors. They were in this business for 10 to 15 years. I just got out of school, and they were like, you know nothing. You're just out of school, and we've been in this for decades, so don't tell us what to do. That was a very difficult challenge in the early onset of my life, and the way I got through it was just small wins, like doing what was in my capacity, and then obviously slowly trying to win people on my side on a small basis. And then as I got more entrenched in the system, I was able to learn who was good at what, and then figure out, like, hey, if we move this guy here and move that guy there, then we would get better productivity. And back then, I still had to report to my father for major changes. So he was keen always to listen to what we were doing, because he was like, you guys have to run this as if it was yours already, because when I'm gone, and you need to know what to do. And he always had this saying, like, you need to learn every position in the company so that no one can take you for a ride. Like, no one can fool you. So we know how to clean the toilets, we know how to cook, we know how to change a light bulb. So when someone tells me, like, oh, it's 2 days to change a light bulb, I'm like, get out of here. I can do that in 10 minutes. Right? So it was a
Sure.
mindset that my dad would always be like, you got to get your hands dirty, get hands on, because that way people can't fool you, because you're the son of the owner or your daughter of the owner. And it's a difficult mindset back then, but yeah, again, with just starting small and proving your worth through skills and output, rather than coercively throwing my name and weight around to be like, hey, listen to me, I'm the boss. So that's how I overcome that challenge when I was younger. And yeah, the second challenge was the rebranding. But we have a saying in the office where it's always easy to do what we've done. So let's go do something different. Because to fall back to what you were doing is second nature, right? So if I
Right.
told you, like on a daily basis, let's say you go exercise and you do 10 squats, and like, okay, tomorrow we're doing 15 lunges instead of squats, and it's different, and you're like, oh, but I don't know if I can do it. I'm like, we won't know until we try. So we always have this saying in the office, like, let's push and see what else we can change, because it's just easy to go back to what we were doing already. And it's a mindset that
Mhm.
we've carried through all my businesses, where we have leeway for experimentation, but we have a fail safe in case it doesn't work.
Hmm. That's actually led me to the next question for you, because it seems your father, of course, as an entrepreneur, has had a huge impact on your life and your career and all the history of the entrepreneurship in your family. But if you think all these mindsets and lessons learned, do you think you have always been a risk taker if you reflect your journey, as you mentioned?
Yes, I think so. I don't know if it was my zodiac sign, because I'm a Sagittarius and I'm carefree, or it was because of my upbringing. So it could be nurture, it could be nature. excuse me. But I think as you know a race car driver, I do kiteboarding, I do extreme sports as like snowboarding. So there's a certain element where you need to make a split decision whether you're going to do this or that, and it comes with the territory, right? Like if we ride off off the groomed path, do we go through the trees and risk it, or do we go safe and on the side? And it's always been in our nature to be adventurous and push the boundaries and see what we can achieve, and it's always just yeah, uh, the victory tastes sweeter when you've done something that people haven't done before. And it's also good for marketing, believe it or not, right? So in the age of social media, if you're doing something unique, the algorithm seems to give you more like headspace.
Right, right, of course. And I think that attitude and mindset has been in your, um in your like a family already. And then of course you can take the advantage of those risks and go out there and do your thing, try things without the fear of maybe failure, or even if you fail, you can just bounce back and try something else or try again. I think that's
Yes.
those are the lessons we can learn. And the saying from your office also, you just try new things if needed, and you take the action that is necessary at that moment. And I think you said your if I think your companies and your hobbies, they are like related also. So there are many things you do in your daily life that you, I think you take risks every day, if I'm correct.
Well, taking risks is part of learning because without mistakes, you have no progress. So risks and mistakes definitely are part of the formula to success because the faster you get over your mistake, the sooner you become a better person. And a failure is only a failure if you stop trying.
That's really well said, actually, and summarized that. I really love those opinions and the insights that all my guests are are saying related to risk and the failure, and how are they interpreting those things. And in many cases they see risk and failure as a positive thing. And I think everyone
Yes.
says their unique opinions. Oh,
I'm
that's a
reading
book.
a book. Yeah, I'm reading a book also called The Guide to Greatness, and it's the same. Like it emphasizes don't get stuck with the decision making. Get like some people have analysis paralysis, and they keep analyzing things and not do anything. And he has a saying something like the the worst thing you can do is have the greatest intention but not do anything with that intention. Like it's the biggest failure to have like I'm planning to do this but you never do it, and it's a regret that some people have. And rather focus than on problems, it's always focus on the solution. What can you do to break over? And that's part of the mindset also.
Right, that's really a good lesson and good mindset to follow. I think it's totally true. But Angie, we have around 10 minutes to go here. I would like to
Yes.
you to share a little bit about your other businesses. We have talked about the classic cars business, and then
Yes, the
you have this
farming is next.
farming. Because I just to share a bit, I would love to have like I saw the pictures of those. I think that's quite
The
a
tower
like
farms,
the
yes.
yeah, the tower farms. That's really inspiring too. I would love to have that kind of in my home or somewhere, like to just pick up the fresh veggies. So tell us a
And
little
eat
bit
it.
about that. Yeah.
Okay, so when my father passed away, I inherited the lake house where we were. I had been going up to this lake since I was 6 years old. So we finally, from camping, we evolved to actually owning our own place and building a weekend home. And this property went straight to me because my father knew that it was me who favored this area. So when I inherited this property, I was like, we're going to take care of bees because back then bees, even till today, are massively dying
Hmm.
and struggling. And I was like, this is going to be easy. We bought almost 300 fruit trees and we bought like 300 bee colonies. We planted everything and positioned everything thinking like, oh, no worries, we got this. And it was my biggest wake up call because within a year, my 300 bee colonies went down to 200, and then the next year went down to 100. And then I had to call the bee experts to say, okay, what am I doing wrong? And we had to learn from scratch that what kind of soil you have, what kind of health is your soil, and how to amend it. And back then, it was always about chemical fertilizing. And we're like, okay, this is what is being taught to us. But through research and talking to people and learning through online courses, we ended up doing slow farming. But because slow farming takes so long to amend the soil to become healthy soil, I was like, I need a shortcut, surefire way to grow flowers and vegetables so I can maintain it, feed my bees, and supply my hotel also with vegetables. And which is what led us to the Tower Farm, which is it is highly visual and very marketable because people love seeing how clean it is, and it looks so organized, and it's what we're known for. But we actually do a ton of slow farming also, where we
Hmm.
grow things in the soil because it's still the best way to grow. And I got into this business because I love nature. I want to know what I'm eating also. I want to know things that I'm ingesting don't have pesticides. And I'm fully plant based as well. So for me to eat my own produce, supply my hotel with produce, call ourselves farm to table, it was it was one of the goals that I had for my business as the CEO, doing the brand and envisioning what I wanted from or how the market perceived us. And these were my personal criterias. Like, we're not just in business to cater to the guests. We're in business to, make an environmental position where we're
Hmm.
taking care of the planet. We're responsible because we're taking care of our own farm, and the farm is taking care of bees. And actually, I think one of your last questions, I have a bamboo farm that we recently got into, and this is sort of my next breakthrough and my next risk because I had invested in roughly 25 hectares of bamboo farm, and
Right.
I have no market for this yet, and I got into it because one, supposedly you can get carbon credits in the future. Two, it was to offset also my love for motorsports because I race on
Hmm.
the weekends and I join various activities for racing. And I was like, okay, and also to offset obviously what our hotel outputs. So, but the fourth aspect is we have now this renewable wood, which is going to be ready in the next 2 years. So I need to figure out as an entrepreneur, how am I going to sell this wood? Am I going to convert it and up process it or down process it so that I can sell it and make a new revenue stream? So that's I think to answer your final question was to what is my biggest risk as of now moving forward, and it's the bamboo farm. Trying to figure out what to do with that and how to make it a profitable business on its own.
Right. That's super interesting that you have many businesses, but somehow they seem to relate to each other, right? They
Yes,
just
it
combine,
does.
make an interesting combination.
And I live it. Like, yes, in the city we do cars. When we have no work, I go home to the farm, and as soon as break of dawn, I'm in the farm. I'm pruning. I'm studying. If do we have a disease? Do we have pests? And I'm head in it. Like everything, I call experts. I'm like, hey, I'm having this problem. How do I solve this? and it's always a constant education from what we know already versus to what we don't know yet. So it's always asking people better than me and like, hey, we encountered this blossom and broad. How come we're getting this? Because some plants aren't getting it, and they explain to us like, oh, you should do this. Maybe your soil's lacking this. So I love it. It's a good break from the fast life to go into the slow life, and weirdly enough, it's so fulfilling to have a farm.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I just that brings me back to a little bit my grandparents' little farm, and there were like potatoes and some veggies and apple trees, and they still are there at their house. So that's sort of like, and I think it's the future, maybe future of the food that people need to somehow provide themselves with what they eat. Mm, little by little, I think it will be like that. As you mentioned, those pesticides and all these things, maybe people
Yes,
want to be more aware actually what they eat. Mm. And one interesting thing, I just one day heard a piece of a podcast that one of professor doctor talked about these um, things, pesticides, plastics that are already in the food. So, for example, if I compared a
yes,
tomato that I collect from my grandfather's farm versus that I buy a tomato from a shop, I wouldn't even recognize what is a tomato. It's the difference is such a huge. Just to go a bit off topic here.
yes. No, I totally agree. The heirloom tomatoes are different from the regular variety that we see now.
Yeah, I have two more questions, Angie. One additional one actually, because you have many companies, and there is a debate that you should focus only one thing. So how you balance with multiple companies, and how you get those? How do you reach those goals? Do you think shouldn't it better to have only one focus? What do you think about that?
Yes, I think if you were a solo entrepreneur, you should only focus on one business. But I had set up a good management team for the hotel. In the beginning, I told you I'm not so active with the hotel day-to-day operations. I help with strategies, marketing, quality checking, but I don't do operational work. I don't check in guests. I don't really do troubleshooting for the business because there's a good management team running the business, and my management team has been with me for the last 16 years. So when I put them together till today, they're still the same team. Actually, I think even more. I think 18 years. Wait, no, wait. My wife and I have been together 19 years, so they've been together longer than me, so maybe more. I think 21 years. I'm my
Fantastic.
dates are off, but basically what I'm trying to say is the management team I put together for the hotel is still the same management team started with when I started changing key people and putting in people that were more of like my age or like my mental capacity. So these same people have stuck with me and have been working with me side by side to take care of the main business, which leads me to be able to experiment and open other businesses. And having key teams with structure helps out because um, I mean, the only way to run multiple businesses is having key people in them to help me because I can't do it alone. I have moments where I have downtime because I do online blogs, I do product reviews for other people. So there's moments where I'm like, I have to shut down everything else in my thinking and completely do other things. So yes, people that support me in the business that I have are the ones that actually do
Yeah.
most of the grunt work. And I'm here as the CEO to ensure that they have all the tools, machineries, and obviously their salary so that they can focus on getting the job done. So my job is to make sure my managers are happy and they have everything they need to be a manager. And then in return, they do their job, which is take care of the business.
Right. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it comes to the whole team and the support, and you also delegate a lot of your work for your fantastic team. So of course, that's the part of the being entrepreneurship. If you have multiple companies to be able to delegate and sometimes find your focus on one thing at a time, for example, like that.
Yes.
One more question for you. If you think,
Go.
I think you have, oh, of course, I would have a lot of more to talk, because I'm just inspired to talk with you today. It's fantastic. But last one for you today, I would like to ask if you think about your whole journey, the risk you have grown in an entrepreneurial mindset family. You have all this experience from all the way at the young age to the day you are handling these businesses. So what would you tell somebody who thinks or are considering to maybe start entrepreneurial career or take that risk, maybe choosing between 9 to 5 job or to start something of his own? What would you say to a person as an advice?
I actually had this question a few weeks ago. A young entrepreneur was asking me like what's one advice you could give me for me to be successful in my new venture? And I told him, I go, focus on delivering a quality product because the money will follow. Don't focus on chasing the money because if you do that, then you lose sight of what's important. Giving a service or a product that is top quality will ensure that people come back to you because that's what people look for when they're going for business or going for a partnership with a company is that the relationship is good and then they consistently deliver what they say they're going to deliver. And that's my one piece of advice for entrepreneurs starting. And then if there's a second piece of advice, get stuck in the moving forward, looking for trying new things rather than getting stuck in like, I don't want to try anything because I don't want to make a mistake and I don't want to make a fool out of myself. So those are, I guess, two pieces of good advice I would tell young budding entrepreneurs.
Those are really good advices, and I think those are the words that everyone should put them in their mind, whether they are young or maybe even older who are considering to make some change in their life. I think it's really useful to also reflect on your decision and risk taking and how would you like to see yourself also in the future. But Angie, I would like to say to you a huge thank you for sharing this podcast, talking about your risks and their rewards, and of course your entrepreneurial career so far. I only say thank you. I'd love to have you sometime again, maybe in the podcast in the future, and see what has happened to your farm and how is it going. But at this point, I want to say thank you for being here today, and I'm super grateful to have an opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you for having me. I hope your listeners take home one thing that would be useful for their career.
Thank you, Angie. Also, I want to say thank you for viewers and listeners, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Ciao.